Captain Dae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of the Wandering Spirit and watched the dead planet grow larger on his screen. The planet had no name, just a number in their star charts. It looked like a gray rock floating in space, covered with the ruins of some ancient civilization that died out millions of years ago. Dae-ho had seen dozens of worlds like this one during his 5 years as an exploration captain, but something about this place felt different. "Any life signs down there, Somin?" he asked his navigator. Somin Park was a small woman who never seemed to sleep and always had her eyes glued to her instruments. She shook her head without looking up from her console. "Nothing, Captain. The planet is completely dead, just like the others we found in this sector," she said. "But the ruins look bigger than usual and the metal readings are off the charts." Woojin Lee looked up from his engineering station where he was checking their quantum resonance drive for the 3rd time that day. The drive was new technology that let them travel faster than any human ship before, but it made strange humming sounds that worried him. "Captain, the drive is working fine, but something feels wrong about it today, like it's singing a different tune than usual." Ye-Jin Choi was studying the scanner readings of the planet's surface and making excited noises. As their xenobiologist, she got excited about any traces of alien life, even if that life had been dead for millions of years. "Captain, you need to see this. The ruins down there are not just big, they are massive, and they seem to be arranged in some kind of pattern that covers the whole planet." What none of them knew was that their ship was being watched by dozens of different alien races who had been fighting each other for thousands of years. High above them, in cloaked ships, 3 major powers of the galaxy were preparing for another battle that would destroy entire star systems. The Velthari Collective had brought their crystal ships that could crack planets in half. The Mordesh Empire had gas cloud vessels that could turn suns into black holes. The Nexus Union had machine ships that could rewrite reality itself. These 3 powers had been locked in an endless war where nobody could win because everyone had weapons that could destroy everything. For 10,000 years they had fought, and stopped and fought again, always careful not to use their biggest weapons because that would mean the end of everything. But today they were ready to risk it all in one final battle that would decide who ruled the galaxy. Admiral Kethavar of the Velthari floated in his crystal command chamber and prepared to give the order to fire their planet cracker weapon. The target was the Mordesh fleet that had been threatening their colonies for months. His weapon could tear apart the fabric of space itself and turn the enemy ships into cosmic dust. He had waited years for this moment. High Admiral Morgoth of the Mordesh Empire sat in his gas-filled command sphere and readied his reality-bending cannon. This weapon could reach across dimensions and erase the Velthari ships from existence, as if they had never been built. The machine consciousness of the Nexus Union calculated the perfect moment to unleash their universe-altering beam that could rewrite the laws of physics in their favor. All 3 fleets moved into position around the dead planet where the human ship Wandering Spirit was peacefully exploring ancient ruins. The aliens paid no attention to the small human vessel because humans were new to space and had no weapons that could threaten anyone. They were just primitive creatures who had barely learned to travel between stars. Down on the planet's surface, Tae-Young Shin was fixing a broken recycling unit in the cargo bay of their ship. He was a maintenance worker who spent his days keeping their life support systems running and making sure the coffee machine worked properly. Tae-Young had no idea that his simple repair work was about to change the course of galactic history. The quantum resonance drive that Woojin was worried about was humming at a frequency that perfectly matched the alien superweapons. When Tae-Young connected 2 wires in the recycling unit, the drive started resonating in a new pattern that spread out from their ship like invisible waves. These waves carried the pattern of human thoughts and human consciousness across space in a way that nobody understood. Admiral Kethvar gave the order to fire his planet cracker weapon. The crystal ships focused their energy and released a beam that should have torn apart the Mordesh fleet. Instead, the beam flickered and died like a candle in the wind. The Velthari admiral stared at his instruments in shock as his most powerful weapon simply stopped working. High Admiral Morgoth fired his reality-bending cannon at the same moment. The weapon that could erase ships from existence made a strange whining sound and then went silent. His engineers reported that the cannon was working perfectly, but somehow the energy was being absorbed by something they could not detect. The Nexus Union machine consciousness tried to activate their universe-altering beam, but found that their quantum processors could not maintain the complex calculations needed to fire the weapon. Every time they tried to lock onto a target, their systems reported that reality was too stable in this area for the weapon to function. On the Wandering Spirit, Tae-young finished fixing the recycling unit and went back to his quarters for a cup of coffee. He had no idea that he had just prevented the first galactic war in 10,000 years. Captain Daeho was still studying the planet's surface and planning their landing mission. Soman was calculating their next jump coordinates. Woojin was still worried about the strange humming from their drive. Heejin was getting more excited about the alien ruins with every scan. The three alien fleets found themselves in an impossible situation. Their weapons that had never failed before were completely useless. The Velthari tried to retreat, but found that even their smaller weapons would not work properly. The Mordesh attempted to ram the enemy's ships, but their vessels moved sluggishly as if space itself was resisting their movements. The Nexus Union tried to analyze what was happening, but their computers kept giving them error messages. For the first time in thousands of years, the three greatest military powers in the galaxy were forced to communicate with each other instead of fighting. Admiral Kethvar sent a message to the other fleets asking if they were experiencing technical difficulties. High Admiral Morgoth replied that his weapons were malfunctioning for unknown reasons. The Nexus Union consciousness reported that local space conditions were preventing proper weapon deployment. None of them suspected that the small human ship exploring the planet below was the cause of their problems. Humans were too new and too primitive to have technology that could affect their advanced weapons. The aliens began to suspect each other of using some new kind of defensive technology, which made them even more suspicious and angry. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Captain Daeho led his landing team to explore the massive alien ruins. They found buildings that stretched for hundreds of kilometers and devices that had been dead for millions of years. Heejin discovered that the ancient aliens who built this place had also fought wars with reality-altering weapons, and these weapons had eventually destroyed their entire civilization. As the humans explored and learned about the ancient ruins, their presence continued to create an invisible field that kept the alien fleets from using their most dangerous weapons. The three powers eventually retreated from the area, each convinced that the others had developed some new form of defense technology. They did not know that a simple maintenance worker fixing a recycling unit had saved the galaxy from destruction. The human ship, Wandering Spirit, completed its mission and jumped to the next system, leaving behind a mystery that would puzzle alien scientists for years to come. In their ship records, they noted the discovery of interesting ruins and some unusual readings from their quantum drive, but nothing that seemed important enough to report to Earth Command. The galaxy had just experienced its first taste of human intervention, and everything was about to change. Mi-young-han stepped out of her transport shuttle and looked across the empty landscape of Kepler 442c. The planet was supposed to be the site of her new terraforming research station, but right now it looked like nothing more than red dirt and gray rock stretching to the horizon. She had volunteered for this assignment because she wanted to help humanity expand into the galaxy, but standing here alone on an alien world made her feel very small. "Well, Mi-young, time to get to work," she said to herself as she began unloading her equipment. The terraforming station would take months to build, but when it was finished, it would transform this dead world into a place where humans could live and breathe without life support suits. What Mi-young did not know was that Kepler 442c sat right on the border between Velthari and Mordesh territory. Both alien empires claimed ownership of this system and had been preparing to fight over it for decades. The planet was worthless to them, but it was the principle that mattered. Neither side could allow the other to claim victory. 3 days after Mi-young began setting up her equipment, the Velthari battle fleet arrived in the system. Admiral Kethvar was still puzzled by the weapons failure at the dead planet, but his orders were clear. He was to establish Velthari control over this system and drive away any Mordesh forces that tried to interfere. The crystal ships moved into orbit around Kepler 442c and began scanning for enemy vessels. Their sensors detected the small human, settlement on the surface, but humans were not considered a threat by anyone. Admiral Kethvar noted the human presence in his log and then forgot about it. 2 days later, High Admiral Morgoth arrived with his gas cloud fleet. The Mordash had no intention of letting the Velthari claim this system without a fight. Both fleets took up battle positions and prepared for combat. While far below on the planet's surface, Mi Young continued building her research station and had no idea that 2 alien armadas were about to start shooting at each other above her head. Admiral Kethvar powered up his planet cracker weapon and aimed it at the Mordash flagship. This time he was sure the weapon would work properly. There had been no technical problems since the incident at the dead planet, and his engineers had checked every system twice. He gave the order to fire. The weapon flickered and died just like before. Admiral Kethvar stared at his instruments in disbelief as his most powerful cannon simply refused to work. His engineers reported that all systems were functioning normally, but somehow the energy beam would not maintain coherence. High Admiral Morgoth tried to fire his reality-bending weapon at the same moment and got the same result. His cannon made the same whining sound and then went silent. Both alien commanders were now facing the impossible situation where their ultimate weapons were useless. Down on the planet, Mi Young was having trouble with her atmospheric processor. The machine that was supposed to start changing the planet's air kept making strange humming sounds and working much better than it should. According to her calculations, the process should take years, but the atmospheric readings were improving much faster than expected. The 2 alien fleets found themselves in an awkward standoff. Neither side could use their superweapons, and their smaller conventional weapons seemed to be malfunctioning as well. After hours of failed attempts to attack each other, Admiral Kethvar sent a message to the Mordash fleet. High Admiral Morgoth, it appears we are both experiencing technical difficulties. Perhaps we should postpone this battle until our weapons are functioning properly. Agreed, Admiral Kethvar. This situation is most unusual. My engineers report that our weapons are working perfectly, but they will not fire in this system. The 2 fleets withdrew to opposite sides of the system and began trying to figure out what was wrong with their weapons. Their scientists ran every test they could think of, but everything appeared to be normal. The only unusual thing in the system was the small human settlement, and humans could not possibly have technology advanced enough to interfere with alien superweapons. Meanwhile, Mi Young continued her work on the terraforming station. She had no communication equipment powerful enough to reach Earth, so she had no way of knowing that her presence was preventing an interstellar war. She spent her days collecting soil samples and adjusting her atmospheric processors, completely unaware that she had become the most important person in the galaxy. As days passed, something strange began to happen. The 2 alien fleets started talking to each other instead of fighting. Admiral Kethvar and High Admiral Morgoth found themselves having long conversations about the technical problems they were experiencing. They compared notes about their weapons failures and shared theories about what might be causing the malfunctions. Perhaps there is some kind of natural phenomenon in this system that interferes with quantum weapons, suggested Admiral Kethvar during one of their conversations. That is possible, replied High Admiral Morgoth. My scientists have detected unusual quantum signatures coming from the planet's surface, but they cannot determine the source. The 2 commanders began to work together to solve the mystery, something that would have been impossible if their weapons had been working properly. When your only choice is to talk, you eventually start listening to what the other side has to say. Captain Kyung-Soo John was having the best trading season of his career. His merchant ship Lucky Dragon had been traveling between alien worlds for months, and everywhere he went he found willing customers and peaceful negotiations. The alien traders who usually shot at each other on sight were now sitting down at the same table and making deals. Kyung-Soo had no idea that his trade routes were creating a network of peaceful zones across the galaxy. Wherever his ship traveled, the local alien warlords found that their weapons would not work properly, forcing them to negotiate instead of fight. The captain thought he was just getting lucky, but really he was accidentally becoming the galaxy's most effective peacekeeper. This is the strangest thing I have ever seen, said his first officer Jin-A Lim as they watched Velthari and Mordash traders sharing drinks in a space station bar. These two species have been enemies for thousands of years, but now they are acting like old friends. Maybe they are finally getting tired of fighting, replied Kyung-soo. Sometimes even enemies need to take a break from war. What Kyung-soo did not know was that his ship's quantum drive was broadcasting the same interference pattern that Mi-young's terraforming equipment was producing. Everywhere humans went, they created invisible zones where the galaxy's most dangerous weapons simply could not function. On a research station in the Outer Rim, Glixavara of the Zaraf Confederacy was studying reports of weapons failures across the galaxy. The Zaraf were a peaceful species who tried to stay out of the major power conflicts, but they kept careful records of everything that happened in space. Glixavara had noticed a pattern in the weapons failures. Every incident occurred in areas where humans were present. The correlation was too strong to be a coincidence, but the explanation made no scientific sense. Humans were primitive creatures who had barely learned to travel between stars. They could not possibly have technology that interfered with advanced alien weapons. Computer, run another analysis of the weapons failure data, ordered Glixavara. Cross-reference with human ship movements and colonial activities. The computer processed the data and displayed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots showed weapons failures and blue dots showed human presence. The pattern was unmistakable. Every red dot was surrounded by blue dots. Impossible, whispered Glixavara. Humans are somehow neutralizing our most advanced weapons, but they do not even seem to know they are doing it. Back on Kepler 442c, Mi-young had finished building her research station and was beginning the long process of transforming the planet's atmosphere. Her work was going much better than expected, and she was starting to hope that the planet might be ready for human colonists years ahead of schedule. The Velthari and Mordesh fleets were still in the system, but they had stopped trying to fight each other. Instead, they had established a joint research project to study the unusual quantum phenomena that were preventing their weapons from working. Scientists from both species were sharing data and working together for the first time in centuries. Admiral Kethvar and High Admiral Morgoth had become something like friends through their long conversations about the mystery. They still represented enemy empires, but they had developed a professional respect for each other that would have been impossible during normal combat conditions. High Admiral, my scientists believe the interference is coming from the human settlement, said Admiral Kethvar during one of their daily conferences. But that seems impossible given their primitive technology. My researchers have reached the same conclusion, replied High Admiral Morgoth. Perhaps we should ask the human if she has noticed anything unusual. And so it was that Mi-young Han became the first human to be contacted by alien intelligence agencies, though she had no idea why two alien admirals suddenly wanted to ask her about atmospheric processing equipment. She told them everything she knew about her terraforming work, but none of it seemed to explain why their weapons would not function properly. Dr. Sang-hoon Yu was having the worst headache of his life. For 3 weeks he had been studying the exotic matter samples that Captain Daeho Kim had brought back from the dead planet, and every time he ran the quantum analysis, the results made no sense. The exotic matter was behaving in ways that violated everything he knew about physics. Computer, run the quantum resonance test again, he said while rubbing his temples. The research station New Seoul was humanity's most advanced science facility, but even their best equipment could not explain what was happening to the alien materials. The computer displayed the same impossible results. The exotic matter was resonating at the exact same frequency as human brainwaves, but that should have been completely random. There was no reason why alien technology should match human consciousness patterns. Sang-hoon had been working alone, in his laboratory for days, trying to understand the connection between human thoughts and alien quantum mechanics. He was starting to think he was going crazy, but the data did not lie. Every test showed the same result. Human consciousness operated on the same quantum frequency as the galaxy's most advanced weapons, but in perfect reverse harmony. If this is true, he whispered to himself, then humans do not just neutralize these weapons. We make them impossible to exist. Commander Yoo-jin Nam was preparing for the worst day of her military career. Intelligence reports showed that a Mordesh battle fleet was approaching the human colony on Proxima Centauri B, and, Their intentions were clearly hostile. The alien empire had decided to test their theory about human interference by attacking a human settlement directly. Yujin commanded a small defense fleet of 12 ships, the largest military force that humanity had ever assembled. But 12 human ships against a Mordesh armada was like throwing rocks at a battleship. The aliens had weapons that could destroy planets, while humans had barely learned to build ships that could survive in deep space. "All ships report ready for combat, Commander," said her tactical officer, Lieutenant Jae-min Song. "But I have to ask, what exactly is our battle plan against enemies who can bend reality?" "We fight with what we have and hope for a miracle," replied Yujin. She had no idea that the miracle had already happened, and that her fleet was about to win their first battle without firing a single shot. The Mordesh fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm cloud made of metal and energy. High Admiral Morgoth had brought his most powerful ships and his deadliest weapons. This time he was determined to prove that the weapons failures had been caused by some kind of natural phenomenon, not by primitive human technology. "Target the human defense fleet and prepare to fire reality-bending cannons," ordered High Admiral Morgoth. "I want to see these humans erased from existence before they can interfere with our weapons again." The Mordesh gunners locked onto Yujin's flagship and charged their most powerful weapon. The reality-bending cannon could reach across dimensions and delete enemy ships from the universe itself. It had never failed to destroy its target. Yujin watched the alien fleet on her tactical display and prepared to give the order to attack. She knew her ships could not survive a direct confrontation, but she had sworn to protect the human colony even if it cost her life. The Mordesh cannon fired its reality-bending beam at the human flagship. The weapon that could erase matter from existence flickered like a broken light bulb and then collapsed into nothing. The feedback from the failed weapon overloaded the alien ship's power systems and shut down their entire war fleet. "What just happened?" asked Lieutenant Song as he stared at his instruments. "The alien ships just went dark, all of them." "I have no idea," replied Yujin, "but I think we just won our first space battle without firing a shot." High Admiral Morgoth found himself floating in emergency lighting as his flagship's main power failed. His reality-bending cannon had not just malfunctioned, it had created a cascade failure that disabled his entire fleet. The weapon feedback had been so severe that it would take hours to restore basic ship functions. "This is impossible," he said, to his chief engineer. "The humans cannot have technology advanced enough to cause this kind of interference." "High Admiral, perhaps it is not their technology," suggested the engineer. "Perhaps it is the humans themselves." On the luxury cruise, liner Harmony, Changmin-Oh was having the strangest week of his career as a hospitality manager. His ship had been chartered by mysterious alien delegates for some kind of diplomatic conference, but nobody had told him that he would be serving Korean fusion cuisine to crystalline beings, gas clouds, and machine consciousnesses. The Velthari, delegates floated in specialized atmospheric chambers and communicated through harmonic vibrations that made his wine glasses ring. The Mordesh representatives existed as sentient gas clouds that had to be contained in pressure suits to survive in normal atmosphere. The Nexus Union sent mechanical avatars that analyzed everything with glowing sensors. "Mr. O, we require your presence at the diplomatic table," said the Velthari ambassador through a translation device. "This conference cannot proceed without human attendance." Changmin had no idea why aliens needed a hospitality manager at their peace talks, but he was being paid very well to keep everyone happy. He entered the main conference room carrying a tray of Korean appetizers and found himself in the middle of the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. "Honored delegates," said the Zeref mediator Glix Vara. "We have gathered here to discuss the human phenomenon that has been affecting weapon systems across the galaxy. Our research indicates that human consciousness somehow interferes with quantum-based superweapons." The alien delegates began arguing about whether humans were a threat or a blessing to galactic security. Changmin served them food and drinks while listening to debates about quantum mechanics and universal peace. He still had no idea why his presence was required, but the aliens seemed much calmer when he was in the room. Yoon Seo Kim had always dreamed of making first contact with alien intelligence, but she had imagined it would happen during a formal diplomatic mission, not while she was studying ancient ruins on a forgotten planet. The xenocultural anthropologist was alone in her research camp when the Velthari shuttle landed nearby and 3 crystalline beings approached her habitat. "Dr. Kim, we need to speak with you about your species," said the lead Velthari through a translation device. "We have information that will change how humans understand their place in the galaxy." Yunseo invited the aliens into her research shelter and offered them synthetic coffee, which they politely declined. The Velthari explained that they had been monitoring human expansion across the galaxy and had discovered something that their best scientists could barely believe. "Your species possesses a unique form of consciousness that operates in quantum harmony with advanced weapon systems," explained the alien scientist. "Wherever humans are present, reality-altering weapons cannot function properly." "That sounds impossible," replied Yunseo. "Human consciousness is just electrical activity in our brains. How could thoughts affect alien technology?" "We do not fully understand the mechanism," admitted the Velthari, "but the correlation is undeniable. Humans are living, breathing disarmament treaties. Your presence makes the galaxy's most dangerous weapons powerless." Yunseo felt her world shift as she realized the implications of what the aliens were telling her. Humanity was not just another species trying to find its place among the stars. They were the galaxy's accidental peacekeepers, and they had been preventing wars without even knowing it. The news about humanity's unique role spread quickly through the alien intelligence networks, but it took much longer to reach human authorities. When the information finally arrived at Earth Command, it caused the biggest crisis in human history. Emergency sessions were called in every major government on Earth. Scientists demanded more research while military leaders worried about humanity becoming a target. Philosophers debated whether humans had a moral obligation to serve as galactic peacekeepers, while ordinary people just wanted to understand what was happening to their species. Ji-hoon Park, the colonial governor of New Harmony, faced an impossible decision when he received the classified briefing about human quantum interference. His colony was located in a strategic position between 3 alien empires, and intelligence reports suggested that all 3 powers were planning to establish permanent bases nearby. "If what the scientists say is true," he told his advisory council, "then our presence here prevents these alien empires from using their super weapons against each other. We have accidentally become a neutral zone." "So what do we do?" asked his security chief. "Do we evacuate our people to avoid getting caught in an alien war? Or do we stay here and accept the responsibility of being peacekeepers?" Ji-hoon looked out the window of his office at the human families who had come to New Harmony to build better lives. They had volunteered to leave Earth and start over on an alien world, but none of them had signed up to become cosmic diplomats. "We put it to a vote," he decided. "Everyone who lives here gets to choose whether we stay or go. This affects all of us, so all of us should have a say in the decision." Dr. Sang-hoon Yu finally published his research findings about human quantum consciousness. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from the edge of the galaxy, where automated monitoring stations began detecting massive energy signatures that did not match any known technology. The readings were so strange that most scientists assumed the sensors were malfunctioning, but the signals kept getting stronger and closer to inhabited space. Admiral Soo-jin Lim was reviewing tactical reports in her office aboard the Earth Defense Command station when her aide burst through the door without permission, something that had never happened before. Lieutenant Commander Hae-jin Kang looked like he had seen a ghost. "Admiral, you need to see the deep space sensor readings immediately," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Something is coming from outside our galaxy, and it is bigger than anything we have ever encountered." Soo-jin followed him to the command center where dozens of analysts were staring at displays showing massive objects moving through empty space. The entities were each the size of small moons, but they moved like living creatures rather than ships or space stations. "What are we looking at?" she asked the senior analyst. "We call them devourers, Admiral," replied Dr. Min-woo Park, the chief xenobiologist. "They appear to be living creatures that feed on quantum energy. Our long-range scans show they have already consumed several uninhabited star systems in the outer rim." Sujin studied the sensor data and felt a cold fear growing in her stomach. The creatures were moving directly toward the core worlds where billions of humans and aliens lived. How long until they reach inhabited space? 6 months, maybe less if they accelerate, said Dr. Park. And Admiral, there is something else. The alien governments have been trying to use their super weapons against these things, but the weapons are not working properly because they have been dormant for so long due to human interference. The galaxy that humans had accidentally pacified was now defenseless against an external threat that could devour entire solar systems. The great powers who had spent centuries perfecting reality-altering weapons found that their ultimate armaments had atrophied from lack of use. Emergency conferences were held on every major world as species that had been enemies for millennia suddenly found themselves facing extinction together. The Velthari Collective, the Mordesh Empire, and the Nexus Union sent representatives to Earth for the first time in history, hoping that human quantum interference might somehow protect them from the approaching devourers. The situation is desperate, explained High Admiral Morgoth to the assembled human leaders. Our weapons that could destroy planets are useless because they have been neutralized by your presence for too long. We need your help to temporarily clear certain areas of space so we can reactivate our defensive systems. Admiral Sujin Lim found herself appointed as commander of the First Unified Galactic Defense Fleet, a position that terrified her because she was responsible for protecting trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. She had 12 human ships, but now she also commanded thousands of alien vessels whose crews spoke different languages and followed different combat doctrines. Ladies and gentlemen, she said to her mixed species command staff, we are about to fight an enemy that eats energy for breakfast and has no interest in negotiating. Our conventional weapons are useless against them, and our super weapons do not work when humans are present. We need to develop entirely new tactics. Do Hyun. Choi was a civilian engineer who volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in galactic history. Working with alien scientists, he had discovered that humans could not only neutralize quantum weapons, but also absorb and redirect their energy under certain conditions. The process was extremely dangerous and required volunteers to risk their lives powering planetary defense systems. The human nervous system can act as a quantum energy conductor, he explained to Admiral Sujin during a technical briefing. If we can build amplifiers that enhance this natural ability, we might be able to create defensive fields that can protect entire planets from devourer attacks. The first test of the human amplifier technology took place on a remote research station where Hae Young Jung volunteered to be the test subject. She was a young physicist who understood the risks, but believed that protecting her homeworld was worth any sacrifice. I am ready, Dr. Choi, she said, as she stepped into the experimental quantum field generator. If this works, we can save billions of lives. If it fails, at least we will learn something that might help the next volunteers. The amplifier activated, and Hae Young felt the strange sensation of her consciousness expanding across space. For a few minutes, she could sense quantum energy patterns across entire star systems, but the strain on her human nervous system was enormous. The experiment succeeded in creating a defensive field that could repel devourer attacks, but Hae Young died from neural overload within hours. Her sacrifice proved that the technology worked, but it also showed that human volunteers might not survive the process. Do Hyun worked frantically to improve the amplifier design, while more volunteers stepped forward, knowing they might be signing their own death warrants. The devourers reached the outer colonies faster than anyone had predicted. The first attacks came without warning as the creatures swept through inhabited systems and drained the quantum energy from everything they encountered. Planets went dark as their energy sources were consumed, and billions of civilians died in the first wave of attacks. Fleet Commander Morthak of the Velthari made the desperate decision to ask human colonies to evacuate specific regions of space so that alien superweapons could function properly. It was the hardest request any military leader had ever made, asking civilians to abandon their homes so that reality-altering weapons could be used in their vicinity. We know what we are asking, he said during his broadcast to human settlements across the galaxy. We are asking you to leave everything you have built, so that we can unleash weapons of unimaginable destruction. But these weapons are the only things that can stop the devourers. Captain Min Ho-an commanded the evacuation ship Safe Harbor and found himself coordinating the largest human exodus in history. Millions of people abandoned their colonies and space stations to create weapon-free zones where alien superweapons could operate, while others volunteered to stay behind and maintain safe areas for civilian refugees. "This is Captain An to all evacuation transports," he broadcast as his ship led a convoy of refugee vessels away from the combat zones. "We are not running away from this fight. We are making it possible for our allies to use their most powerful weapons against an enemy that threatens all life in the galaxy." The evacuation was completed just in time. The alien fleets activated their reality-altering weapons for the first time in decades and unleashed devastating attacks against the approaching devourers. Planet cracker beams that could split worlds in half, reality-bending cannons that could erase matter from existence, and universe-altering devices that rewrote the laws of physics in local space. The weapons worked, but their power was beyond anything the galaxy had seen for generations. Entire sectors of space became uninhabitable as the side effects of the superweapons created zones where the laws of physics no longer applied consistently. The cure was almost as dangerous as the disease. Admiral Su-jin watched from her command ship as the first major battle against the Devourers unfolded. The alien superweapons were destroying the creatures, but they were also destroying everything else in their path. Space itself was being torn apart by forces that were never meant to be used so freely. "Admiral, the weapon discharges are creating massive distortions in local space-time," reported her science officer. "If we continue using these weapons at this intensity, we may damage the fabric of reality itself." Su-jin realized that the galaxy faced an impossible choice: use the superweapons and risk destroying everything they were trying to protect, or let the Devourers consume all life in the galaxy. There had to be a third option, but she could not see it yet. Do Hyun Choi worked around the clock to improve his human amplifier technology, while the battle raged across multiple star systems. He knew that volunteers like Hae Young were dying to power defensive systems, but he could not find a way to make the process safe for human operators. "There has to be another way," he said to his research team. "We cannot keep asking people to sacrifice their lives just to power our defensive weapons." The answer came from an unexpected source when So-min Park, the navigator from the exploration ship Wandering Spirit, suggested using multiple humans working together to share the quantum load. Instead of one person powering an entire defensive system, teams of volunteers could work in shifts to maintain protective fields around critical locations. The first multi-person amplifier was tested at the human colony on New Harmony, where Governor Ji-hoon Park had convinced his people to stay and help defend the galaxy. 12 volunteers worked together to create a quantum field that protected the entire colony from devourer attacks. "It is working," reported the test coordinator. "The shared load is much easier for individual volunteers to handle, and the defensive field is actually stronger than what we achieved with single operators." Admiral Su-jin incorporated the new technology into her battle plans as the war against the Devourers continued. The last Devourer died in the fires of a reality-altering weapon discharge that turned an entire star system into a zone where time moved backwards for 3 days. Admiral Su-jin Lim watched from her command ship as space slowly returned to normal, knowing that the galaxy had won its greatest war, but at a cost that would take generations to understand. "Final casualty reports, Admiral," said her aide Lieutenant Commander Hae-jin Kang. "We lost 400 million civilians across all species, and approximately 30% of inhabited space is now uninhabitable due to superweapon contamination." Su-jin stared out at the twisted space where the final battle had taken place. The laws of physics were still unstable there, creating beautiful but deadly aurora effects that would persist for centuries. "And the human volunteers who powered our defensive systems?" 12,000 confirmed deaths from quantum overload, Admiral, but their sacrifice saved billions of lives. The victory against the Devourers had proven that the galaxy's superweapons were too dangerous to use regularly. The reality-altering cannons, planet cracker beams, and universe-bending devices had saved civilization, but they had also created dead zones in space that would never again support life. The major powers realized that humanity's quantum interference was not a problem to be solved, but a necessity for galactic survival. President Narasong stood before the first joint session of the Galactic Assembly, representing Earth as humanity officially joined the galactic community. She was a small woman facing an audience of crystalline beings, gas clouds, machine consciousnesses, and dozens of other alien species. But her words would reshape the future of civilization. Fellow beings of the galaxy, she began, the war against the Devourers has taught us that our greatest weapons are not the ones that destroy, but the people who ensure those weapons are never needed. Humanity accepts the responsibility of serving as living peacekeepers, but we will not do this alone. The Human Mediation Corps was established as a joint organization where humans and aliens worked together to prevent conflicts before they could escalate to the point where superweapons might be needed. Human volunteers would serve on starships and space stations throughout the galaxy, ensuring that the most dangerous weapons remained dormant, except in the most extreme circumstances. Captain Jinwoo Bei was selected to command the first integrated peacekeeping vessel, the Harmony's Edge. His crew included humans who provided quantum interference, Velthari scientists who monitored weapon systems, Mordesh engineers who maintained ship operations, and Nexus Union computers that calculated threat assessments. This is either the best idea in galactic history or the worst, he said to his mixed-species bridge crew during their first mission briefing. We are going to patrol the most dangerous regions of space with a ship that prevents everyone from using their biggest guns. Their first assignment was to mediate a territorial dispute between two minor alien empires who had been preparing for HFY War. When the Harmony's Edge arrived in the contested system, both fleets found that their reality-altering weapons would not function properly, forcing them to negotiate instead of fight. Captain Bei, this is Admiral Zeth of the Corvan Defense Force, came the message from one of the alien fleets. We demand that you remove your ship from this system so we can resolve our territorial dispute properly. Admiral Zeth, this is Captain Bei, he replied. Our ship will remain in this system until both sides agree to peaceful arbitration. Your weapons are not needed here. The negotiation took 3 weeks, but both alien empires eventually agreed to share the disputed territory. Rather than fight a war with conventional weapons, the Harmony's Edge had successfully prevented its first conflict, proving that the peacekeeping concept could work in practice. Dr. Yan-Su Kwan established the Institute for Quantum Consciousness on a space station positioned exactly halfway between Earth and the galactic core. Her mission was to study the deeper implications of humanity's unique neural patterns and help both humans and aliens understand how consciousness itself might be the universe's natural defense against chaos. We are discovering that consciousness is not just electrical activity in biological brains, she explained to her research team. It appears to be a fundamental force that creates stability in quantum systems. Humans are not unique in having consciousness, but we seem to be especially good at projecting it in ways that affect our environment. Her research revealed that other species also had limited quantum consciousness effects, but human neural patterns were uniquely effective at stabilizing reality on a large scale. This discovery led to the development of training programs where aliens could learn to enhance their own consciousness-based abilities. The Institute became a symbol of the new galactic cooperation, where human researchers worked alongside alien scientists to unlock the mysteries of consciousness and quantum mechanics. Their discoveries would eventually lead to new technologies that could create stable zones in space without requiring human presence. Dongjun Kim was part of the first generation of humans born after the Devourer War, and he grew up knowing that his species had a special role in maintaining galactic peace. When he graduated from the Integrated Academy on New Harmony, he was qualified to serve as both a starship officer and a quantum consciousness specialist. You are the bridge generation, President Narasong told his graduating class during the commencement ceremony. You will grow up working alongside alien species as equals, and you will help build a galaxy where cooperation is more powerful than conflict. Dongjun chose to serve aboard a deep space exploration vessel that was mapping the regions of space damaged by superweapons during the war. His job was to help identify areas that might eventually be habitable again, while also serving as a quantum interference source that kept the ship safe from any remaining weapons contamination. The new galactic order was not perfect, And there were still conflicts between different species and political factions. But the major powers had learned that their ultimate weapons were too dangerous to use, and the presence of human peacekeepers ensured that most disputes were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Sun Ja-oh had been a young engineer during the Devourer War, and she spent her career helping to rebuild the galaxy after the conflict. Now she was an elderly administrator managing a space station where human and alien children played together in artificial gardens that orbited a star. "Look at them," she said to her assistant, as they watched the children playing games that combined human creativity with alien logic. "They do not see each other as different species. They just see friends." The children were living proof that the new galactic order was working. Human and alien families lived side by side throughout the galaxy, sharing knowledge and building communities that would have been impossible before the war. The quantum interference effect that made humans such effective peacekeepers had become just another fact of life, like gravity or the speed of light. Captain Kyung-Soo John had retired from active trading but still made occasional runs between worlds that held special meaning for him. His ship Lucky Dragon had become a museum piece, representing the era when humans first began accidentally creating zones of peace throughout the galaxy. "I still do not understand how fixing a broken coffee machine on my ship helped prevent galactic wars," he said during an interview with galactic historians. "But I am glad that my small contribution helped make the galaxy a safer place for everyone." The historians were documenting the early days of human expansion into space, trying to understand how a species that had barely learned to travel between stars had accidentally become the galaxy's survival system. The story they uncovered was one of ordinary people doing ordinary jobs while unknowingly reshaping the fate of civilization. Mi Young-han continued her terraforming work on worlds throughout the galaxy, but now her projects included alien ecosystems and mixed species colonies. The research station she had built on Kepler 442c had become a thriving city where humans and aliens worked together to transform dead worlds into gardens. "Terraforming is not just about changing a planet's atmosphere," she explained to her students at the Galactic Terraforming Institute. "It is about creating homes where different forms of life can flourish together." Her work had evolved from simple atmospheric processing to complex ecosystem engineering that took into account the needs of multiple species. The techniques she developed were being used throughout the galaxy to create worlds where biological and artificial life forms could coexist. The galaxy had learned that its greatest weapons were not the ones that destroyed, but the people who ensured those weapons were never needed. Human consciousness had accidentally become the stabilizing force that kept reality from tearing itself apart, but this was not just a human responsibility anymore. Other species were learning to enhance their own quantum consciousness abilities, creating a network of stability that extended far beyond human settlements. The peacekeeping fleet had grown to include thousands of ships crewed by volunteers from dozens of species, all working together to maintain the fragile peace that had emerged from the ashes of the Devourer War. Dr. Sang-Hoon Yu, now an old man, published his final research paper on quantum consciousness and the nature of reality,